Victoria, I want a divorce." His voice was low, smooth, almost rehearsed, and it carried the casual cruelty of a man who thought he had already won. Richard didn't flinch, didn't hesitate, didn't even look guilty. Instead, he swirled the deep red wine in his glass, letting the candlelight catch the liquid like spilled blood. Around us, the restaurant buzzed softly, cutlery chiming, laughter bubbling, the world carrying on as though my life hadn't just been shattered in a single breath. I forced myself to look at him, to keep my face still even though my chest burned with shock. He smiled then, a cruel, knowing smile. "And since you signed that prenup, you'll leave with nothing but the clothes on your back." He said it with relish, savoring every word, like a cat playing with its prey before the kill. For years, I had been the perfect wife, standing by his side through scandals, making excuses for his coldness, building his reputation as much as his fortune. I had given him my youth, my devotion, my silence. And here he was, dismissing me like a housemaid who had overstayed her welcome. But what Richard didn't know, what he couldn't even imagine, was that this dinner was not going to end the way he thought. The woman he had been cheating with for 2 years, the one whose perfume still lingered on his suits, the one he thought he owned and controlled, was sitting right across from me tonight. Not as his mistress, not as his secret escape, but as my lawyer, my weapon, the storm he never saw coming. Richard leaned back in his chair, a predator confident in his trap. "Don't look so devastated, Victoria. You'll always have your dignity. And me? I'll finally have the passion I deserve." His arrogance was so thick it made my skin crawl. I let the silence stretch, let him think he was in control, while my gaze slid past him, past the candlelight, past the smug curve of his lips, to the woman sitting at the edge of the table. She was stunning, of course. Tall, elegant, with sharp cheekbones and eyes that could slice through steel. Richard thought she was here as his secret victory lap, a cruel way to flaunt his betrayal right in front of me. But what he didn't realize was that every step she'd taken into his arms had been carefully calculated, by me. She wasn't here to console him. She was here to expose him. Her name was Danielle Carter, one of the sharpest attorneys in the city. And for months now, she had been working with me, gathering every dirty secret Richard thought he had buried. Every affair, every offshore account, every bribe he had slipped into the shadows. Richard lifted his glass in a mock toast. "To freedom," he said. But Danielle's lips curved into a smile that wasn't meant for him. It was meant for me. And that was when I knew. He was about to realize he wasn't the hunter tonight. He was the prey. The waiter appeared, placing plates of seared steak and roasted vegetables before us, but none of us reached for our forks. Richard was too busy gloating, spinning his little speech about how I'd be better off without him, how he'd make sure I was taken care of. It was insulting, hearing him paint himself as generous when what he really meant was I'd be left with nothing. Danielle leaned forward, resting her elbows gracefully on the table. "Funny thing about generosity, Richard," she said smoothly, her voice sliding into the conversation like a blade through silk. "It only works if you actually have control over what you're giving away." Richard frowned, caught off guard by her tone. "What do you mean?" Danielle tilted her head, eyes gleaming. "I mean that a prenup only holds weight under very specific circumstances. Fidelity, for example." I finally let a small smile touch my lips. Richard's brow furrowed, confusion flashing across his face. "What are you talking about?" he demanded. Danielle reached into her bag and pulled out a sleek black folder. She placed it on the table between us with deliberate care, like a queen laying down her final move in a chess match. "We're talking about this," she said. "Every message you've sent. Every photo. Every lie. 2 years worth of evidence that doesn't just void your prenup, Richard, it buries it." For the first time that evening, Richard's mask slipped. His hand twitched as he reached for the folder, but Danielle's perfectly manicured nails snapped it shut before he could touch it. "Aha," she said softly, her smile never wavering. "You don't get to touch what's going to ruin you." The color drained from his face, but he tried to recover, tried to laugh it off. "You think some texts will scare me? I control the courts in this city. I control everything." Danielle's laugh was quiet, dangerous. "Oh, Richard, you don't control me. And you definitely don't control the press." I leaned forward now, my voice cutting through his bravado like glass. That prenup you love so much? It only protects you if you were faithful. Clause 47, paragraph 3. The moment you cheated, Richard, the agreement became worthless. Gasps rose from nearby tables. Diners who had begun to realize they were witnessing the implosion of a billionaire's marriage. Richard stared at me, his lips parting soundlessly, as if the words themselves had stolen the breath from his lungs. His empire, his fortune, his carefully constructed image. It was all slipping from his grasp, and for the first time he knew it. Desperation makes even the most powerful men pathetic. Richard slammed his fist on the table, rattling the silverware, and hissed, "You think you can take me down? I built this empire from nothing. You'd be nothing without me." The anger that dripped from his words only fueled my resolve. For years I had cowered before that rage, but tonight, I felt no fear. Danielle leaned back, her calm composure a perfect contrast to his unraveling. "Actually, Richard," she said, her voice sharp as glass, "you'll be nothing without her. Because every board member, every shareholder, every investor who's been waiting for a reason to cut ties with your scandals, they're going to see this evidence. And once they do, your name won't open doors anymore, it'll slam them shut." Richard shook his head violently, his bravado crumbling. "No. No, you can't." But his voice lacked conviction. He could feel the ground collapsing beneath him, and it terrified him. For the first time in years, I felt taller than him, stronger than him. And I wasn't done yet. The restaurant had grown eerily quiet, all eyes drawn to the drama unfolding at our table. Richard's face glistened with sweat under the golden light, his perfect image cracking like porcelain under pressure. "Victoria," he whispered, now the arrogance gone, replaced by fear. "We can work this out. Think about what you're doing." I tilted my head, studying him the way one might study a dying flame. "I did think about it, Richard. For months. While you were sneaking around, I was preparing for this very moment." Danielle opened the folder now, sliding glossy photos and printed messages across the table like a deck of damning cards. Fraud. Embezzlement. Affairs. Offshore accounts. "Do you really want to go to court with this in play?" she asked sweetly. Richard's eyes darted from the evidence to my face, then back again. He looked like a man drowning, reaching for anything to keep him afloat. But there was nothing left to hold on to. The waiter returned at that moment, as though summoned by fate, holding a bottle of champagne. "Compliments of the chef," he said cheerfully, oblivious to the storm raging at the table. He poured the sparkling liquid into our glasses, the bubbles rising like laughter. I lifted my glass slowly, my eyes never leaving Richard's hollow, broken stare. "To freedom," I said softly, the words carrying more weight than they ever had before. Danielle raised her glass too, her smirk widening. "To victory." Richard didn't move. He just sat there, shattered, his empire collapsing around him before dessert had even arrived. The toast wasn't just for me. It was for every sleepless night, every cruel word, every tear he had dismissed as weakness. Tonight, the roles had shifted. I wasn't the silent, obedient wife anymore. I was the woman who walked into dinner as his possession, and walked out as his executioner. When we finally rose from the table, I felt lighter than I had in years. The chandeliers still glittered, the violins still played, but to me, it felt like a coronation march. Richard didn't follow us. He couldn't. He sat there frozen, a man undone by his own arrogance, staring at the evidence of his downfall. Danielle tucked the folder neatly under her arm as we walked out, her heels clicking like gunshots against the marble floor. Outside, the night air was crisp, electric, filled with the promise of a future no longer chained to his cruelty. "You played him perfectly," Danielle said softly, her tone laced with satisfaction. I smiled, breathing deeply for the first time in years. "No. Irreplía. He played himself." Behind us, in that glittering palace of a restaurant, Richard's empire had already begun to crumble. By morning, the board would have his resignation. By week's end, the world would have his scandals. And me? I would have everything he thought he had stolen from me. Dinner was over. But his nightmare had only just begun.